Hello fellow Disney Plus watcher, I'm excited to talk about Disney Plus with you today, or rather Star Wars with you today. This video is something I wanted to do for a long time. With the ending of the book of Boba Fett just a couple of days ago, I think this is good timing. Now a disclaimer, remember this is just one man's opinion, and if you're very emotionally protective around the prequel trilogy specifically, and you find it difficult to handle a guy talking negatively about some of the movies, this might not be the video for you. If you're okay with hearing vastly different opinions, welcome my friend. Some placements might feel weird, still I feel pretty good about the list. George Lucas's work is not sacred and Disney's Star Wars aren't all dumpster fires that ruin childhoods.
There's a little gray area in there and that's where you operate.
Oh.
Alright.
And ranking a movie next to a 7-season show, for example, is pretty challenging. Keep that in mind. And hey, let me know all of your vastly different rankings. Let's discuss and debate Star Wars. And hey, if you enjoy rankings, check out my Book of Boba Fett episode ranking right after this video. Because why not? Number 18 at the bottom is Star Wars Attack of the Clones. I know it's currently popular to love this movie, but that doesn't make the movie itself any better. Look, I love what the prequels ultimately brought to the table in terms of lore and political commentary on war, profiteering, and shadow governments and all that, but the real meat of this trilogy comes with Revenge of the Sith, not this second film. Attack of the Clones has C movie level dialogue and acting. Most of it is probably to blame on the directing. The sets and backgrounds are actually ugly looking. I know visual effect work wasn't at the place it is now, but the costume choices, the very non-Star Wars feel of it all, is one of the worst things about the prequel trilogy, but especially this one, in my honest opinion. The lived-in nostalgic world of Star Wars gets replaced with green screen only worlds that are too colorful to get you into the world. It says a lot that I feel nostalgic vibes when I think about the original trilogy and the Phantom Menace even. I watched all of these movies in a row for the first time when I was 11 or something, and I don't feel anything when I rewatch Attack of the Clones. Why? It's fake. It's the first Star Wars film that is not shot on film and where all the sets are digital. It has the worst acting jobs. It abandons Yoda's puppet and goes for a flippity-flip acrobatic Jedi. The clones look like NPC characters in a video game. Anakin's dark turn during the movie feels overacted and isn't earned in my opinion. It has the worst Anakin and Padme dialogue out of all of the films.
But the women and the children too.
R2 and C-3PO are terrible overused characters in this one. The story's kinda okay at the core. I love what it does in the future to set up the Clone Wars series, and the look at Kamino and Jango Fett was great. But for me, this film is abandoning Star Wars. I know that is a harsh statement, but the stuff that makes Star Wars for me is abandoned in this movie. Next up, number 17 is Star Wars The Clone Wars movie from 2008. Yes, I enjoy this one a little more than the previous. I know, it has far worse animation than the Clone Wars series ultimately learned to master, but the simple adventure vibe is present here. It's less serious and more playful than the prequels are, and that does work in its favor. Asajj Ventress is a menacing presence. I enjoy Count Dooku here. The banter and development between Anakin and Ahsoka is actually pretty good, especially recently on rewatch when I watched all of the Clone Wars in chronological order. I was actually surprised how much groundwork this movie lays for the development between Anakin and his Padawan, but there's still a very hokey feeling to this movie, you know? The interactions between characters are really lifeless and stiff. It must have been pretty painful to see this play out on a cinema screen. Still think the decision is weird. It does have an episodic nature to it, so it was dead easy to have it stay as episodes. Ultimately, this movie is an awkward watch with the worst PlayStation cutscene animation with some cool redeeming qualities and some nice banter between Anakin and Ahsoka. Coming in next, number 16 is Star Wars Resistance, the show that starts before The Force Awakens and ends right before The Rise of Skywalker, about a group of pilots in the early days of the Resistance. This show had way more potential, but is a bit of a guilty pleasure, even though the humor is terrible. Like, it's not humor for children that are excited to sit down and watch Star Wars, it's actually humor for the most brain dead of infants. That is a bit harsh, but I know it's popular to say bad things about Star Wars Resistance, so I'm just gonna do that. But the last thing this ranking will be is popular. The tie-ins with the sequel trilogy are well done. Tam is a very believable character who is constantly struggling between loyalty to her friends and the control the First Order has over her. Her character is well done. There are some iconic worlds and things here and there. Overall, it's a very easy watch with loads of bad humor, especially the main character is so unfunny and a meh animation style. But to me, it has its charms here and there, and the main title theme is somehow really iconic. I don't know, I kind of dig it. Next up, Number 15, Star Wars The Phantom Menace. Aesthetically, the most Star Wars feeling Star Wars movie out of all the prequels. Big part of that is that they were still working with loads of sets and they were filming on film to really capture the cinematic feel of Star Wars. When I think back at my first watch, this film is the only one of the prequels that has that nostalgic, warm, fuzzy feeling, you know? In terms of the story, it might be the least consequential. Yet, it contains more iconic moments than Attack of the Clones. The pod race, the Trade Federation, the fight between Darth Maul and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. Even though I have to say, upon rewatch, that fight doesn't really hold up, and I think it's getting too much love. There isn't any rawness to the fight. It's over-directed, too clean, and the pre-planning around the choreography shines through the screen. Overall, it's still a frustrating film, I think, and the bad acting is strong with this one. The story has the least to offer out of all the prequels. Jar Jar is, of course, a terrible stereotype and very unfunny. It's fine to have some comic relief, but the extent of which he was such a main character I found quite annoying.
Mesa day starting pity okie day with the brisky morning munchin', then boom and pow, Mesa here. Excuse me.
Jake Lloyd's Are You an Angel, Anakin, and Natalie Portman's Queen Amidala were no match, and was quite awkward seeing what they did in terms of age with Anakin in the next movie. Phantom Menace is the most nostalgic prequel and better than Attack of the Clones, but still bad. Coming up next, number 14 is Solo, a Star Wars story. Here we're starting to get into stuff that I like. Still a massive Star Wars fan, and I tend to enjoy this world so much that I probably like most stuff that comes out in this franchise. Solo is an odd one. I like it. The action, the plotting, the adventure vibes, it's perfectly decent. But it's also a Han Solo movie with just some basic recap of his life, how he got his blaster, when he got his ship, how he met Chewie. When it came out, I was quite entertained, and I still like it, but it's not so much a real worthy addition to Star Wars that really brings anything substantially new. I do really enjoy the relationship between Han and Kira, and the Crimson Dawn, Criminal Empire teases are interesting, the world is there, the sets, the aliens, but the movie ultimately didn't really pop. Most of the scenes were too dark, like you couldn't see everything that was going on. How the relationship between Han and Beckett ends, without giving potential spoilers, it was just kinda anticlimactic. I enjoy Alden Ehrenreich a whole lot as this slightly different Han Solo, but I actually found Donald Glover as Lando not that convincing. Weird that most of the love seems to go to him. I mean, the guy can act, but his impersonation of Lando felt too much like an impersonation. Good thing our lead was more likable. It's one of the more forgettable but perfectly enjoyable Star Wars films. My next pick, number 13, is Star Wars Rebels. While I'm not the biggest fan of the animation style, it's maybe a little too Disney-fied. While in some parts in the show there's just too much unnecessary and uninteresting side adventures in a row. While some characters are unfunny and all that, I really like Rebels, and it does a lot for the Star Wars universe. The main character, Ezra, is one I find endearing. I remember while watching the Mandalorian Season 2 finale, I was shouting, "Ezra, Ezra!" at my TV because I didn't believe there was any chance of Luke Skywalker appearing. That was a spoiler, but I know you already watched that. Apparently, that's how much I was invested in Ezra and Rebels. Back to Rebels, the show. His pull to the dark side and the role Darth Maul plays is interesting. We explore a lot of new ways of the Force and bring new beings like Bendu, who is very interesting, kind of a gray force within the spectrum of light and dark. Guest roles in the series like Darth Vader are epic and well done. We also get some great closure between Ahsoka and Vader. And oh, did I mention Grand Admiral Thrawn? What a chilling, calculating, menacing, and intelligent villain that is. One of my favorite characters maybe in Star Wars. Yes, the filler is strong with this series. I guess it's part of the format of the show, but sometimes just kind of watching uninteresting stuff happening for half a season. But then again, some big universe-changing punches happen in the show. Really like Rebels despite its obvious flaws. Next up, we have number 12, Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. The most thought-provoking and moving prequel out of the three. Yeah, it definitely still suffers from ugly green screen work, wooden acting, bland costume design, and that still holds these prequels back big time, but it's less distracting than in the Attack of the Clones. The entirety of the second half of this movie is nothing but galaxy-changing events, dramatic turnarounds, betrayal, tragedy, and the chilling creation of Darth Vader. I can say whatever I feel like about these prequels, but man, this origin story of Darth Vader was so worth it in the end, and I love the existence of this movie even though the visual storytelling is not my thing. But in this third movie, it's the easiest to forgive. As an 11-year-old kid, Anakin's burnt body and the Emperor finding him there and creating him into Vader had such an impact on me. And upon rewatches, I appreciate the social commentary of this movie about how giant shadow government takeovers are possible because of war manipulation and mass deception and the good soldiers follow orders dilemma. It's so heartbreaking during Order 66, you know. The execution is lacking throughout the whole trilogy, but this one's by far the best, I think. Next one on the list, number 11, The Book of Boba Fett. On the one hand, a really welcome addition to the Star Wars universe with a story that I can everyone connect with, about a warrior that redeems himself, that redefines what it is to be strong and honorable, all that. Most of the episodes are a nice slow burn with loads of different genres it borrows from. We have a samurai, a western, mafia, action, fantasy show, which delivers with a fresh take on Boba Fett with a killer finale that really unleashes Boba as a warrior. Without going into details, the thing that makes this show ultimately confusing and just not one of the strongest things to come out of Star Wars is the complete detour it takes to tell another story for 1.5 episodes that's not connected to Boba Fett, not connected to the main plot about the Syndicate trying to take over Tatooine and the bad guys, not really connected to any big themes or tie-ins. It's just a confusing show that tries to do multiple things. It does it with style and great action set pieces, but at the end of the day, I'm sitting here glad this show exists, but still wondering why this show exists. Oh, and the start of Mandalorian Season 3 will be damn uncomfortable after this show. Starting off the top 10, Star Wars The Force Awakens. This feels like the most corporate spreadsheet movie out of all the movies. It's been set to death, but yeah, the movie's a little too much like the New Hope template. The fan service is not that subtle or anything, but my first experience watching this movie was so special. The cinematography, the acting, and the characters are top notch, and the entertainment value is really good. Yes, this movie doesn't have much to say or add to the Star Wars lore that is refreshing. It does the bare minimum in terms of story and world building, but it's still so goddamn entertaining. They played it safe, but they opened the door for great Star Wars here. I love Kylo Ren as a character. He's dangerous because of how unpredictable and emotionally unstable he is, and I do really love the intimate and dramatic scene between him and Han Solo. This movie puts entertainment first and nails the Star Wars aesthetic. It does some of the things I find most important in Star Wars. It's definitely flawed and a corporate playbook safe bet of a movie, but if I'm smiling the whole way through, it works, man. Number 9 would be Star Wars The Bad Batch. A great series with a couple of uninteresting episodes, but with the top-notch animation we know from the later days of the Clone Wars, a new era when there's a lot of uncertainty in the galaxy. This show is about that uncomfortable middle period from Order 66 and beyond up until the original trilogy, of course. Love the way it explores the good soldiers follow orders dilemma, how the clones have to unlearn the terrible system they were part of and the awkward responsibilities that brings with it. And we are shown how the tyrannical empire gains control over planets, introducing privacy-violating mandates and restrictions. Like a show that comments on that is exactly what we need in weird and uncertain times like these. For me, Star Wars can be a spiritual experience because I get so much from it to chew on and reflect on, and The Bad Batch is Star Wars brain food wrapped in a nice, entertaining Ninja Turtles in space show. Yeah, like The Bad Batch are so Ninja Turtles.
You ain't a ninja?
No.
You're a full-fledged mutant hottie.
Do not call me mutant or hottie.
No. Funny.
But yeah, thoughtful and entertaining show. And Omega as a character grew on me big time during the show. Some love for Omega, man. Her moral compass and what she adds to the team is so sweet. It's interesting to see a situation where the adults seem to learn more from the child than the child from the adult, right? It's her innocence and her never-ending crave for justice that makes her endearing. My number 8 would be Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. Not really a loved movie, but here it is. As a trilogy, the sequels don't really flow well together. The Rise of Skywalker proved that. It deserves the criticisms it is getting. I get it. The trilogy falls apart, especially now contemplating a few years later. Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker are kind of contradictory. Rey Palpatine was never the plan until they started writing this movie. Nothing can be more clear, but Rey Palpatine works in this movie. Prove me wrong. It is the worst thing Rey could ever hear within the film and gives her a very personal reason to defeat Palpatine. It's kind of episode 6 all over again, but you know, it doesn't bother me. The ending where we hear all the Jedi voices, it does make sense as an ending to a series as a whole. The granddaughter of Palpatine and the grandson of Vader are the ultimate defeat of the Palpatine bloodline. That's poetry, and actually very loyal to the way George Lucas approaches Star Wars.
You know, kind of duplicating the Luke Skywalker role, but you see the echo of where it all is going to go. Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
This movie found a way to make the sequel trilogy worth it, even though the trilogy stumbled. The Force dyad concept was great. Ben Solo's redemption I found very emotional. I cried a few times during this movie. C-3PO was the best he ever was. The fetch quest part of the film, like we have to get this item, that item, actually was pretty cool, and the tempo of this movie was so fast and that made it a literal roller coaster. Yes, it is a shame that they underutilized Finn and Rose was just an extra in this movie, and that's sucks. Chewie's medal is the most annoying fan service there is, and C-3PO getting his memories back was undermining his sacrifice. There are flaws to point out, but man, what an entertaining and emotional ride this was. Rewrite your legacy if you earned it. Coming from a dark place, you can come back from that if you face it. Rey carrying the name Skywalker on, that final scene is one of my favorites in the movie, and I was bawling my eyes out. I can't lie. This is such an unpopular opinion, but Rise of Skywalker is the most Star Wars out of the sequels in terms of spirit and energy. Next one on the list is number 7, Star Wars The Clone Wars, this series. The first real serious Star Wars animated show, essentially aimed at kids, became one of the things that matured Star Wars the most. Clone trooper dilemmas and important questions about individualism, loyalty, lots of clone troopers getting proper character development, lots of opportunities to explore the gray area of the Jedi and of the Republic War in general. There's multiple arcs within this anthology series that I can think of, like the Mortis arc, the arc about General Krell, the arc where Ahsoka gets framed for murder, the Siege of Mandalore. It's all so well told that some of these arcs have the potential to be my favorite movie if said arc happened to be an epic live-action movie. Like, that's how beautiful the Clone Wars can be. But yes, of course, it starts out pretty hokey, and there's stuff that mankind calls filler that doesn't really do much for the story of Clone Wars, but it's just kind of mediocre, dead simple adventure television, you know. I don't take issue with that, it's fine. There's so much good stuff, especially in later seasons, that this show is destined to keep a pretty high spot on my list. Next up, number 6, The Mandalorian. What hasn't been said about this show? The body language of actor Pedro Pascal and voice work make for a pretty compelling main character, and of course Grogu is the cutest thing ever, cutest character in existence. I love what the show does with the theme father and son, and how Din's role as a father slowly separates him from his old ways. I'm a bit too young to go in depth on this theme, but I hear people say that becoming a parent changes you greatly, and that is something that The Mandalorian shows in such an intimate way while being a damn entertaining show. So many highlight characters, world building, it just works, man. Season 2 broadens the world by bringing important characters in, and was thrilled to see them return, but they also just fit into the story and Din's quest pretty nicely. Watching this show weekly as it came out was such a satisfying experience, and the show is consistently good with very few meh episodes. Starting with the top 5, Star Wars Return of the Jedi. Let's get into the originals. The atmosphere and stakes in the throne room finale scene are so damn powerful. I just get chills hearing that music. But the heart and soul of this movie is Luke's courage. Luke's courage to try and get his father to the light side. What is there left to say about this movie, really? You know? The opening scenes on Tatooine are iconic. The fate of Boba Fett is too silly, but okay. I think the Ewoks are pretty cool, and their whole point is to be silly, to serve as a contrast against the Empire and to get that kiddie back into Star Wars, right? That kiddie nature. It's not the best original trilogy film, but it's amazing for how it wraps up the trilogy. My number 4 pick would be Star Wars A New Hope, one of the most iconic films of the saga. I love how much of a slow burn it is in the first 40 minutes, just Luke uncovering some secrets and meeting some friends, you know? I love how simple but focused the story is. It's the most classic hero's journey. Luke dreams of going off-world, then the inciting incident happens, and then he must go off and gets wrapped up in a way bigger story that's beyond him. It's not a coincidence that Force Awakens chose this movie as the template. I love the ensemble of this movie and how it all feels like they're improvising, right? The acting was different back then, but it feels very fresh to see it now. This movie does have a loose feel to it. Even though the big galaxy gets explored through this very small band of rogue characters, this movie gets you into the world. John Williams did the Lord's work and renewed the way cinema deals with music. He just made it bigger, you know? Where it all began is still one of the most special little treasures. My number 3 is Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. Boom, surprise! Rogue One's in my top 3. Rogue One is one of those rare movies that actually get tenser, more exciting, and more emotional scene per scene. You know, most films have an attention span and an emotional journey that gives you these little highs to digest on to the next big scene 20 minutes later, you know what I mean? It goes up and down like a waveform. That's the way movies divide your attention. This is just how consuming a movie works generally. But this is different. Rogue One is ascending that. For me, I get sucked into this movie every scene of the way. From the opening scene where we meet Jyn, seeing what happens to her family and establish her tragedy and setting up Krennic as a villain is just interesting. But then skip to the end I'm crying and my mouth is on the floor, and it's just so great how they're using Vader, and the story so resonates with me. It puts the war in Star Wars. It's about finding courage, faith and hope in the darkest of situations. It's a family tragedy, a gritty war movie, a fun ensemble adventure, an emotional roller coaster, especially when we're building to the end, and it's just so memorable. Now for my number 2, Star Wars The Last Jedi.
You what?
This movie gives everything we never wanted, but always needed. I know this might be my most controversial pick, but there's not a movie in this list that I have a clearer picture of why I place it in the ranking as high as I do. This movie is about failure. I see a lot of fans having these reactions of, why did they do this to Luke? Why did the Master Codebreaker mission fail? That was pointless. And no, let me stop you there. You are supposed to feel incredibly bad about seeing Luke the way he is in The Last Jedi. And the whole side mission that's basically a let's try this, you know, in these dire situations is supposed to be slightly unsatisfying because the whole movie is about how to deal with failure. Because that is the point. I kind of want to pause the speed of my video right now because I really feel like this movie is misunderstood. Everyone can have their opinion, right? There's no problem. Just have your opinion. Fine. There's no problem. But I want to repeat that. The whole mission with Master Codebreaker, the whole thing with Luke, everything is thematically really, really strong and connected and deliberate. This is the point. For me, that feeling of, oh my God, Luke, what did you become? I don't want to see you like this. You were my hero. Why? Translates to, wow, this hurts, but I'm loving the emotional journey I'm going on. Don't confuse deliberate thematic storytelling with ruining characters to bully fans. And I don't want to talk about all the social media and fan response stuff, or it's just this movie. Of course, Rian Johnson did not deliberately piss you off. And Luke's payoff is huge. Luke does do the hero deed. He is the hero again right at the end of the movie. What a beautiful send-off, I think. We all see these characters, not only Luke, dealing with failure, overcoming it. We have to see the dark places they're in. We have to see their plans fail in order to get that hero's journey. It's totally okay if you don't like the movie, and of course there could be good reasons for it. Of course you can have good reasons to not like this movie, but I see all these people hating the movie, and the thing I'm constantly wondering is, are you confusing your feelings, which are intended by the director, with the judgment about the quality of the movie and characters? Like, I think you have your feelings mixed up, but please let me know in the comment section what you think about that. Anyways, the first thing I shouted when the credits rolled was, what the fuck was this movie? That's what I said. Like, I was so incredibly moved in a way I didn't expect. Enough about that one. The absolute king of Star Wars media is my number 1, Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. I'm gonna be short on this movie. It's by far the most iconic. Hoth, Cloud City, Luke and Yoda training on Dagobah, Luke and Vader's duel, the Carbonite scene, and Han's I love you, I know. Guys, I don't think cinema's getting any better than this. The big thing that this movie has going for it is the darker places Luke is exploring, facing his fears, his discovery that Vader is his father, which pulls the rug out from under you as a viewer. I had an incredibly shocked response when the I am your father twist happened, because you wanna know? I never heard about Vader being Luke's father before my father showed me the movies, and I forever thank him for not running his mouth. Thanks, Dad. This film shuffles the cards of this trilogy in such an exciting way. I mean, our heroes get frozen in carbonite, thrown down shafts, and I can't imagine waiting 3 years for Return of the Jedi after this masterpiece. But yeah, the folks over at 1980 had to. Sheesh. But I'm thinking about wrapping this up. Thank you so much for watching. I'm curious, what is your ranking of all the Star Wars stuff? Or what is your top 5? I bet all the lists will be very different. Be sure to let me know in the comment section. If you're interested in my ranking of the Book of Boba Fett episodes, you'll find it in the description, or, you know, visit the channel. Did you like this video? Then be sure to give that a click. Thank you so much. For now, have a wonderful day and see ya.